Hey guys, what's going on? It's the Interior Auto Mechanic. Today, I'm going to give you a 2024 end-of-year update on the Track Yaris, also known as Project Slowkart. So stick around and we'll jump right into it. So, as you can see, the Yaris is a little bit torn apart at the moment. Nothing's wrong with it. Still runs perfectly fine. It's not wrecked or anything like that. What I'm currently working on is a different cold air intake setup, and you got to remove the headlight to do that, and the bumper's got to come off a little bit as well. So I'll be releasing a video on the new cold air intake setup probably in the next couple of weeks or so. What I really want to showcase in this video, though, is all of the parts that I have collected over this year and the past couple years to get this car to what I would call Phase 2. And you guys have seen just about every modification that I have done to this car. And, well, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. But it can be more fun. Phase 1 basically showcased the fact that you could do simple bolt-ons to this car and have something you could daily drive and also take to the track on the weekends and have a ton of fun with. Phase 2 is going to show that with a little bit more work than just bolt-ons, you can have a lot of fun. And yes, it's going to be a little bit more expensive to get it to that point, but you're going to make more power and you should be more competitive. So with Phase 2, we're not going to be able to keep all of our OEM Toyota reliability, I guess you could say. We are going to be going with a lot of aftermarket stuff. And without further ado, I kind of just want to jump right into it and show you guys all the parts that I've collected and talk about them and see what you guys think. And here is all of the fun stuff. This is everything that I've been collecting over the past, I would say, 18 months to get this car ready to go for Phase 2. And we'll just start from the left and work our way to the right. Right over here, we've got our Siberian Bushings for our front sway bar, and then also we have new bushings for our rear axle beam. These are going to be a full polyurethane bushing, so these should be a lot better than the factory crapo rubber ones that they come with. And as you guys have seen probably in the Magic Collar video, I had these and I did not install them, nor did I install the rear Magic Collar axle beam collars, because the rear axle beam had a little bit of rust on it. I didn't want to fight with it because I had a really big event coming up, and anyway, we just never got around to installing them. So I figured I'd just save those till Phase 2. So we've got this. They also sent me this hat, so thank you guys very, very much for that stuff. I will put all the links to this stuff down in the description down below as well if you decide you would like to follow along at home. Next, for anybody that knows racing at all, if you see BC, you know what that box is. That is Brian Crower titanium valve springs and retainers. So what these are going to allow is for us to maintain higher RPMs. And we've got our retainers right here, and our valve springs are right down in there. You're going to have to trust me because I don't want to yank them all out right now. For the purpose of the titanium valve springs and retainers, and I'll probably explain this again in a future video, but that will allow us to be able to rev to higher RPMs, because the factory valve springs will probably fail around 7,500 RPMs, maybe 8,000, but these should be able to go well into that range with no issue, and that's what I want. I kind of want to bulletproof this motor as much as possible. Again, if you're familiar with any type of racing or JDM culture, you're going to have heard of Jun. And Jun makes some wild stuff, and what's inside of this box is racing camshafts for our Yaris. Now, I did go with their drop-in camshafts, and the reason for that being is I want to utilize the factory ECU as much as possible for Phase 2. Phase 3, it would basically be going full standalone ECU, full race car, make it to where you can't really daily drive it, and I don't want to go that far just yet. So with the drop-in cams, we should be able to still use our factory ECU and have a lot of fun. Make some good power, increase our power band some, and still have a reliable car that we can take out, enjoy on the weekends, and also daily drive if we want to. Hits keep coming, baby. Cusco LSD Type RS. If you're familiar with JDM vehicles or racing or anything, you have heard of Cusco. I've got their LSD right here inside this box for the transmission. I've also got their transmission gear oil that they recommend to run for that. And then on the transmission front, I have the last 2004 through 2006 Scion XB final drive and output shaft. And then we've got our bolts to install them. This is crucial on this transmission as well, at least in my opinion. When I raced at Import Alliance and did some other track days with this car, I can keep up in the turns, I can't keep up in the straights. The car's just not geared right. And with this output shaft and final drive, it will keep our engine in its power band longer. So an example, if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, say at 70 miles per hour, you're, say, currently at 3,300 RPMs in the Yaris with its factory gearing. With this final drive and output shaft modification, that will put us closer to 4,000 to 4,200. And I know that sounds wild, like why would you want to increase your RPMs? And the reason is this engine has a narrow power band. This engine's really not making power until it gets to the 3,800 and up range, and then it kind of peters off around 5,500. So that's why we've got our Jun camshaft, so that should allow us to make power at higher RPMs, which these will allow us to go to higher RPMs without hurting the motor, hopefully, and this will get us there, because without the right gearing, we're not going to be able to crank up the RPMs enough to make the power. So hopefully that explains it. As I mentioned before, the rear axle beam on the car is a little rusty. So let me show you another thing I've got for the car. And that's this piece right here, which is a 2014 Toyota Yaris SE rear axle beam. And now you're probably wondering, you know, aside from my axle beam being rusty and my car being a 2007, why would I upgrade to this axle beam? Why would I go with the 2014? And I'll show you why. This rear axle beam is a factory rear disc axle beam. And do I need rear disc? Do I need to upgrade to it? Absolutely not. Could I stick with factory drums and just get a nicer rear axle beam? Yeah, absolutely I could. However, I figured if I'm doing the work, and we're going to be replacing these bushings anyway and having to take the axle beam out and replace it, I might as well try to source a rear disc. And I will tell you right now, this took some searching. I had to drive about 600 miles round trip to get this thing because these are not common. The downside is they did remove the calipers, and I'm going to have to still come up with a few parts to make this fit. But you'll be right there along with me when I'm installing it, so you'll get to see how everything comes together, and if we've got to modify anything to make it fit, it should be, for the most part, a pretty straightforward swap, but we're going to find out one way or the other. So this is going to be a huge upgrade that I'm really looking forward to, but I've actually got one more thing that I'm looking forward to as well, and that is this. A 2014 Toyota Yaris 5-speed manual transmission. And while there's technically nothing wrong with my transmission, I didn't want to take a chance taking mine apart, installing the new final drive, output shaft, and LSD into my transmission, and then not having something to fall back on. So my transmission is basically going to be my backup transmission, and this is the one that is going to be getting built. This is probably one of the only things that you will not see me build. I'm going to probably have to outsource this because transmissions are kind of like magic. And if everything isn't put together perfectly, it will bind, and I really don't want it to destroy like 20 some odd $100 worth of parts that's going to be going into this thing. And also, we are going to be trying another modification on this transmission that I did not show you. So we're going to see if that's going to work out though. So I picked up this transmission earlier this year. Believe it or not, the Yaris 5-speed transmissions are kind of hard to find because they all have a ton of miles on them, and most of the time, second gear synchronizer, third gear synchronizer, they're just crunchy. When you go to shift, they grind. And this one is probably no exception. This thing's got probably 250,000 miles on it, but it's complete. And it didn't just come as a regular old 5-speed transmission. It actually came with the cradle and the engine attached to it, which supposedly the engine was bad. They said that it had possibly a blown head gasket, which I've seen happen before, but the oil wasn't milky and the engine is spotless clean inside. It was a fleet vehicle, so it was serviced constantly. So I don't know. I might just have a spare motor. And speaking of spare motors, we got one. This here isn't just your standard run-of-the-mill Yaris motor either. What we have here is a 2015 Toyota Prius C, specifically C, engine. And if you don't know, those cars run a 1NZ FXE engine. Now, the 2004 through 2009 Toyota Prius, the one that looks like an egg that was around everywhere back in the mid-2000s, also runs a 1NZ FXE engine. However, the Prius C has a couple differences. And before I jump into those differences, for the people that maybe are just getting into autocross or wanting to modify their Yaris, you're probably saying, why in the world would you take a Prius engine and put it in a race car? To answer that question, quite simply, is because this is a high compression motor from factory. With the modifications we've got planned with the cams and the valve springs and retainers, we should be able to see around 14.0 to 1 compression ratio for this engine, which, if you don't know what that means, it just means it can pump out some decent power for the size of the motor. And I'll get more into that in depth in a future video explaining the difference between a high compression motor and a low compression motor. Jumping into some of the differences that this engine has versus the 2004 through 2009 Toyota Prius FXE, right off the bat, and this is probably the biggest one, it runs an electric water pump. So if we can mitigate parasitic loss and only have the crank pulley drive our AC compressor and an alternator, we should be gaining some power. It's not going to be a lot, but it's going to be something. And when you're dealing with a motor that doesn't make a ton of power to begin with, something is better than nothing. One of the downsides with the Prius motors is, you can probably see on here, there's no alternator, and there's no bracket for an alternator or anything. With it being a hybrid, the battery basically and the regenerative braking basically acts as an alternator itself, and that is the car's main source of electric power. So we are going to have to do some modifications to this motor to make it work. I will be documenting everything that I do to this motor to show you exactly what we are doing, so that if you decide you want to try it at home, you can. I'm not responsible if you break anything or can't put it back together or can't get it to run, but if you want to learn how to do it, I can at least show you how I did it. One of the cool things with this motor is that it only has 16,000 original miles on it. You can look at the block, you can look around the motor, and you can just tell it's fresh. The reason this motor has such low miles on it is because these really don't go bad. They're as tough as what the FE motors are in the regular Yaris. Now, if you run one low on oil or overheat it, sure, it's going to go bad. Any motor would. But the benefit with the FXE motor is there's a lot of them out there with low miles, this one being one of them. And I know a lot of people would say go turbo or go supercharged. My thing is, if I'm going to build a motor, I want to build it right. And this is the easiest way forward. Phase 3/phase 4 would probably go build a turbo motor on a stand and pump out a bunch of power. But I think this is going to get us to be a little bit more competitive, have a lot more fun, still have a ton of Toyota reliability, because we're still dealing with all Toyota parts for the most part, aside from the aftermarket parts that we are going to put on this motor. And should just be able to have a fun time with it at the track and have a good daily driver if I want to do that. Now, I'm not telling you to run out and buy one of these motors, but I will tell you this motor was insanely cheap. And the fact that it already has high compression pistons in it from factory is a huge perk. Do high compression pistons, you're looking somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000 to $2,000 just to upgrade the pistons, the rods while you're there, and then also do your head gasket and get everything else put back together. This motor comes stock with high compression pistons, so the rods are not beefy on this motor, but that's okay because there has been some testing done on these motors, specifically from a guy in New Zealand, and I'll post his channel down below too so you can check it out. But he put one of these in his Toyota Echo, and the thing just rips. It's 9,000 RPMs all day long. He did have a standalone ECU, so we're not going to be able to get to 9,000 RPMs, but we are going to be able to touch the top end of our rev range, hopefully a lot easier than with our current setup. Some of the stuff that is going to get removed from this motor is this stupid EGR setup that they have. And basically we're going to strip this down to a long block and change some stuff out. So all this intake manifold, the fuel rail, all this stuff is going to get yanked off, and we'll just have a nice long block to work with. So all 6 of you that follow along with Toyota Yaris engine building and racing on YouTube probably know Joey's channel as well. If you don't, I'll put it down in the description box down below so you can check out his channel. He is currently in the middle of an engine swap on his car. He's going 2ZR, which is a Corolla 1.8 liter engine. And if we keep the daily driverness of this car, I think I just made a word up, daily driverness, the daily ability of this car to do basic Yaris things, I should just be able to hop in the car and drive it across the country, and I don't know, maybe we can hit up Button Willow or something like that. Time will tell on that, though. We'll see how his build goes, how my build goes. Hopefully there's no headaches or anything like that. So if you're watching this and you would like to see me and Joey get on a track together and see how both of our cars compete, put it down in the comment section below so that we know that there is interest in it. Also, Joey, if you're watching this, which I hope you are, I'd like to make that happen regardless if people are interested or not, because I need to learn some of your camera skills, because your videos and camera skills are way better than mine. So guys, that's pretty much the 2024 update. Now going into 2025, I am going to attempt to have this car up and ready for, let's say, early to mid-March. Probably going to end up being April if I know how car projects typically go. Might even push into May a little bit. But I just want to make sure that everything is put together properly and that nothing is rushed. If I can get it done sooner, heck yeah, I want to get it done sooner. And with this thing being down currently and going to be down for an untold amount of time while we swap everything over, I'm not going to be able to drive it, obviously, and I'm not going to be able to track it. So while that sucks, you might notice there's a nice car-shaped square right here where another car could be parked. And I'm not saying there's another car, but there probably is another car. And that's probably going to be a replacement for the Yaris for the time being until I get this one done. It's not a Yaris, and it's actually not even a Toyota. I'll give you a little hint. It's the same brand as the car that is sitting behind this one. So hopefully that little hint might let you know what type of vehicle I'm getting. Maybe Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for sticking through with me on this build, on this video, and this whole process with this Yaris. I've learned a lot. Hopefully you've learned a lot, and we're going to learn a lot more, hopefully, as we go forward. So, if you like this content, if you like what you saw in the video, if you like the upgrades that you're seeing that I'm going to be doing, please, 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 please like the video and subscribe to my channel. You guys have no idea how much that truly does mean to me, and it shows that there is interest in this platform, especially to aftermarket companies that might still want to build aftermarket parts for cars like this. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, put it right down in the comment section down below, and I will get back to you as soon as physically possible. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Good luck on your projects, and have a great day.